Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. And this is an ancient art. It predates the Phoenicians 5,000 years, and it's just a magical experience. It takes thousands of hours of dedication to even begin to master this art, and I don't think we'll ever stop learning. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell so you know when my next tutorials are coming out next. And your comments, feedback are really appreciated. Please give me a thumbs up. It takes 1 second. And if you wouldn't mind crediting me for any designs I do simply by saying tutorial by DDLynn Designs or design credit by DDLynn Designs. So let's get started. I recently posted a little coming soon, and what I made here, I call this the horseshoe link. You can call it anything you want, and it's really easy. This was done in 10mm jade beads. So these are all jade beads. I cut 2.5 inches of 18 gauge round dead soft wire, and I cut 8 pieces. Because of the large clasp I made, which is a 1-inch clasp, and I'm going to tell you how long this is, a 1-inch hook, this bracelet ends up being exactly 7.5 inches long. So that's the 7-inch mark, that's 7.5. Then I made one with a 8mm. This is spotted leopard jasper. Beautiful beads, lots of earth tones and little spots, hence the leopard name they gave it. On this one, I cut 8 pieces of 18 gauge round dead soft wire, and I cut them 2 1/4 inches. I also made on this one a little over a 1/2 inch clasp and a just a little over a 1/2 inch hook. So the clasp is the same concept of making the links, and you can use it on any design. I also wanted to show you how you can take this design and literally make it into something else. So this is a beautiful pendant. I did 16 gauge wire and I hammered it. Then I wrapped a trillion cut garnet cabochon. It is flat back. And then I created this design. Haven't decided what I'm going to do on top here. I may be adding a jump ring, but just wanted to let you know that you can really go off on this. And the more you elaborate on it, the more it changes. And for an example, here's a decorative clasp link, and I wrapped half round wire around that. So let's get started. Because this is the same thing over and over again, I'm only going to do the link once because there's really nothing to it. I promise you it is easy peasy. I do recommend you start out with at least 18 gauge round, and the reason is because the wire, even though we're going to be hammering the arc, which is this part of the link, we're going to hammer that. That's going to harden it up for us some, okay? 20 gauge might bend really easy unless you were going to use like a 3mm bead. Then I would say, okay, you know, do that or make a necklace out of it. It would make a beautiful necklace. So I've already started my bracelet, and because it's only going to take one more link, on this one I'm using sterling silver. So I cut 2 1/8 inches, and in reality I really cut 2 1/4 by accident, so I'll be taking a 1/4 inch off. And on this one I'm going to need 10 beads, so I'm going to be using 10 beads. I've already got 9, so it's really easy. All you're going to be doing is making a loop and curling the ends back. So let's do that. So presume I cut myself 2 1/8 inches of wire here, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be using this one for my clasp. I use square dead soft sterling silver wire. Now I use 20 gauge on this, and why did I use 20 gauge on this when I just told you we should be using a minimum of 18? Because silver wire is a much harder wire. It's a whole different beast. It also has immediate memory, so it's not very forgiving. So this 20 gauge is going to feel more like an 18 gauge copper square. So it's going to harden much faster and it's going to hold up a lot better. So you need to cut yourself. If you're going to be using a 5mm bead, this is an 8mm bead, and this is a 10mm bead. So on a 5mm bead, you're going to be cutting 2 1/8 inches, 10 pieces or 9, depending on how big you want your clasp and hook. On a 8mm bead, we're going to be using 2 1/4 inches of 8 pieces. And on a 10mm bead, we're going to be using 2 1/2 inches of 8 pieces. So I hope that makes sense. Please write that down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my center. And I'm going to be using my 6-step bell making pliers. And there are 6 steps. On this one, I'm going to be using the, what number did I use on this? I'm trying to remember. I think it was the number 3. Yeah, I'll know in a minute. You can always expand it if it's too small. So here's another tip. I meant to share this with you. You're going to want to measure your bead. So let me get my caliper. I'm going to get my electronic caliper. And I'm going to put my bead in the back here. And I'm going to slide it in. It says it's 5.150. I don't know how accurate these things are. Frankly, I never think beads are exactly that. But anyways, it's telling us it's a 5mm bead. So here's a little tip. If you put your bead in there, and now it says 5.2, who knows what's right? Now it says 5.3. And the more I move it down, it seems to get smaller. There we go, 5.1. So I'm right in this little nook here. So what you do is you push your bead out. And here's a really good tip. You can use your pliers as a gauge. So I know that that's too small and that's actually too big, but we're going to shrink it down. So I'm going to take my 20 gauge square, because I'm using a 5mm bead, and I'm going to find my center and I'm going to use the number 4. Okay? So I'm going to come around this way because I can see I'm really close to my camera. I have it down low today. I'm trying something different. So I'm going to eye my center. If you're new to wire wrapping, I highly recommend that you mark your wire. And I'm going to always take my time for beginners. And this is a beginner tutorial. So you should be able to do this. So all I'm going to do is just bring my wires together. And I'm going to find my center. If you find that one of your wires is a little bit longer, see how I'm coming in and this one's looks like, and I don't know if you can tell, that it's just a little bit behind. Just swing the longer wire closer in first. And then we're going to cross them over. Trying to stay in frame here, folks. I might have to move my camera stand up. So you should have something like this. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to put your bead in there and you're going to see how tight that is. You don't want it so tight where you can't get your wire through it. And you also don't want it too loose where your bead is going to be sliding back and forth. You really want to make sure these beads don't move, okay? So this is going to stretch out once we hammer it. So I'm going to move this stuff back. Hopefully I don't hit my camera. And when you hammer your wire, it's just going to naturally stretch out just a little bit. So I'm just going to go around, up the arms just a little bit. And then I'm just going to hammer the bottom on the arc a little bit more. So here we go. I'm standing up, you guys. I'm just trying to stay in frame here. Okay, so now I'm going to put my bead back in, and that's perfect. I can roll it around there, and there's barely, like if I push it to this side, there's barely any gap, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my buffing block, and I've got the hammered side on the back. And I'm actually not going to buff that out because nobody's going to see it. And I'm just going to clean up the bottom because we're going to be wrapping the sides. Now on these down here, I only did like 8 wraps. So on this one I did 8 wraps. On my smaller bracelet, because I wanted more detailed design, I did 18. And it's up to you what you want to do. but you should do at least 4 just to make sure that your bead is really tightened down really, really good. So I'm just going to buff this. This is a buffing block, and it's commercial grade. Construction workers use it. It's 180 grit, and I buy them by the like a box of 10 or something like that. They last much longer than a fingernail file. So I'm going to cut this now because I know I need it to be 1 inch. If you recall, when I first started the tutorial, by accident, I made them all, when I first cut the wire, I made them all 2 1/4 inches, and I wanted them 1 1/8 inch. So I'm simply just going to cut this on, these are 1 inch squares. I'm simply going to cut this on the 1 inch line. Then I'm going to line it up. And I save every piece of silver. I mean, every little piece. I have this little basket here because I'm going to sell it. And I don't metalsmith. Maybe someday I will. I think about it a lot. Just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. But I save the tiniest pieces. I mean, dust size, because it all adds up. So, and I took some old jewelry apart because I wanted the stones. And so these are sterling silver, and this is some good weight on here. So don't throw stuff away even if it's broken. You can always sell it. So the next thing that we're going to do, and this is the important part, I noticed that this side is just a wee bit longer. So let me take a look at that again. Okay. You noticed I saved that little shaving there. I got stuff all over the place. So here's the important part. When you cut and make all your loops, okay, and you don't want to close them off. You just want to cut and make your 8 loops. Before you close them off, I'm sorry, let me back up. So you want to cut your 8 loops, and then when you make your loops around your tail ends, I am at a loss for words, you guys. You always want to bring your wire in first. Or the other thing you can do is just wrap one side. So that's what I'm going to do. And after I wrap one side, then I'm going to bring it in, okay? I'm going to add my bead, and I'm going to continue wrapping the other side. So that's the only thing you got to remember. If you, after you make all 8 hoops, okay, you don't loop off until you bring in your next piece of wire through the loop. So I'm going to wrap one side, and to make 18 wraps on each side, I'm going to need 8 inches of wire. On this, I'm using 26 gauge. I would recommend that you use 26 minimum. On the 10 millimeter bead bracelet, I used 24 gauge. These were big holes, so I didn't want my wire all loose going back and forth. So you always need to compensate for your hole size, okay? So let me get my little roly-poly bead there. I'm going to cut myself 8 inches of wire. And with sterling, as I mentioned, not only does it harden immediately, it has immediate memory. It's very springy. So you're going to notice that if you haven't worked with sterling before, I do not recommend it if you're first starting out because it's expensive. It can run upwards of $45 an ounce, which can be $4 to $6 a foot for high gauge wire. For thicker gauge wires, and anywhere from 30 to 89 cents to $1.03 a foot. So it adds up really, really fast. And if you're using 40, 50 feet in a bracelet, you can imagine how quickly that bracelet is going to get priced up. So I've got my 8 inches of wire. I'm just going to make a loop so I can find my center. And I'm going to wrap the wire on the top, meaning my wire is going to sit on the top. This is my top, okay? My back is where the hammered side is. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want my bead to be sitting down. See how the bead is actually down inside the loop? I don't want it sitting like this with the bead popped up on my wrist like this. I want this as flush as I can get it to my wrist because it's round. It doesn't have a flat back. Hope that makes sense. Please reach out. Now, how do you know how far up to wrap? I'm going to go 1/4 inch. Let me move this up here. So this is a 1 inch square. That's a quarter. That's a half. That's 3/4. That's 1 inch. So I'm going to come up 1/4 inch, and that's going to give me plenty of room for my bead. And I'm just going to start my wrap on one side. And if you are working with silver, you need to push your wires down more frequently than you would with copper. If you haven't worked with it, and anybody has any scrap silver to let you play with, you're going to be very surprised how different it really is. So this wire is hardened so much now that I actually have to push this 26 gauge wire. See the spring on it? I have to literally push it. So I've got my 18th wrap. Sorry, you guys, for all the noise. Can't seem to get my chair to scoot in. Okay, so I've got my 18th wrap, and this is what I mean. It's so hard now. So here's a really good tip. You don't want, I'm on the back now, okay? Because my wire is running over the top. This is the top. I'm going to slide that up a little bit. Before I go any further. Looked like it was just a little too far down. And how you know is you can put your bead in. Because you don't want it sitting directly on the bottom, because we have to get it in our loop, and we don't want it so tight where it's hitting the bead, right? So let me see. That's good. That's perfect. See, I got that little bit of gap there so I can hook my next link through. So I'm actually going to be sliding this through the loops in this, and you'll see that in a sec. Woo! Just lost my bead. So let me put this here. So here's what's important. We don't want that wire. So let me turn it around to the back. I mean, sterling is amazing. It holds up really, really well, but it's a bugger to work with. And if you started out on sterling, you'll never know the difference until you go to copper. But if you started out on copper, holy smokes, you will know immediately. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that this little piece of wire right here, so this is my back, is cut, so push your wire down a little bit, is cut to the inside, but just barely. So I've just got this little baby nib right there. Because we're going to roll it into the inside so it doesn't poke. You don't want anything poking someone on their wrist, their neck. And all I'm going to do is just roll and squeeze. Now that looks like it may have been just a smidge, like a micron too big. So I'm just going to come in on the inside and I'm just going to nip that little tip off. Now it's hiding on the inside of my loop. Now, this is where we're going to lift up on our wire. Make sure that you're in the right direction, okay? Because your bead is pushed up, and you just slide through. That's all you're going to do. Just slide it through. Then you're just going to add your bead and continue. So that's all you're doing every time. There's nothing to it. It's super, super, super easy. Did I say super, super too many times? Oh, I just laugh at myself. So now I'm going to do the same thing, and you want to make sure that that bead is good and tight in there. You don't have a lot of gap space. So how I do that to make sure I can get it down to where this one is, because it has a tendency to want to slide up, is I go on an angle and I push down with my thumb. Then as I'm coming around, I pull it down so that this side is lining up with this side. Now it's going to have a tendency to want to slide up a little bit. So just kind of push it down until you can lock it in. And then you're just going to complete your wraps. I'm going to stop to make sure it's not sliding up, and it is a little bit. So I'm just, I don't know if you saw that sliding down a little bit. I want it even with each side because it wouldn't look very good if this was way up there. And then again, it wouldn't matter because it could be a very organic piece that you're doing and you're not caring about evenness and symmetry. You just can't go super fast with this 26 gauge silver. And I actually cut myself excess so I had something to work with. In the beginning of this bracelet, I tried to cut it precisely to what I needed, and what a pain. Just having that short of wire was really a bugger to work with. You can see, and I don't know if you can tell, like the little struggling that I'm doing, you see it's just like a spring. So I'm trying to take advantage of everything to get it to wrap around there so that they're even, and that looks even. So I'm just going to bring it around the back, and let me stand up because I want to make sure that you see this, and silver is very reflective. So here's the back and this is the inside, and I'm just kind of pushing that wire down a little bit. I know it's hard to see, you guys. It's so reflective. It's just a little tiny nub. And so I'm just going to roll it in. So let me get in a better working position. I'm going to come on the outside and I'm going to roll. So I'm rolling my pliers so it hugs right in on this inside here so it's not poking anybody. So there we have it. That's all you're going to do. So I'll teach you how to make the hook and clasp. So I just want to make sure this is on my 1-inch mark, and it is. So the next thing I'm going to do is, let me straighten this wire out here. It got a little bent from me yanking on it. I'm going to squeeze this U shape, my little horseshoe here. It's going to look like a horseshoe. At least it looks like a horseshoe to me, where my tips are coming kind of together. And then all I'm going to do is use the number 1 step on this bracelet, which is the 10mm jade beads. I use the 2nd step because it's such a big piece. I wanted to stay kind of in line with all of that. So I use this to make my loops. Because this is a smaller, more dainty piece, I'm using my smallest barrel. So let me make sure I'm on my back. And all I'm going to do is just roll this towards me, and I'm going to roll it in. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one, but I'm going in the opposite direction. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can always turn it around. Make sure your little loops are lining up with its own wire so that it's hitting itself. Now, if for some reason you find that they're a little off, where they may not appear evenly, I'll show you another tip. I'm just going to lock those in. Just put your plier back in through both loops, and we're going to squeeze it even more together now. And this is where we're going to be attaching our hook. So you can just line them up this way so that you make sure that they're even, and you can roll back a little bit if you need to so that the pressure is even on both, and then come around the other side. Just roll in there a little bit, and that should be good. So that's it, gang. That's all you do. Necklace, bracelets, earrings, pendants. I just love how pretty this was. Just loved it. I'm not sure I'm going to oxidize it. I think I'm just going to polish it. Got something on there. I just think it's so, so pretty. And it could be a man's piece very easily because of the straight lines. There isn't a lot of swirly stuff. But I have to tell you, a lot of my Japanese clients love my weaving. So anyways, there we have it. So all we're going to do now is we're going to measure this. And I have a 6.5 inch bracelet. So if I want to make a 7 1/4 to 7.5, I'm going to be making a 1/2 inch clasp. Now I already have a clasp here, but it doesn't go with that because it's copper. So it's the same thing. I've already made my U shape, okay? And I've already hammered it and buffed it. So I'm going to decide on how long I want that clasp. So here's a tip. When you're making your clasp, you have to decide on how far out you want it. So for example, on this one, after I rolled the legs back, this is a 1/2 inch clasp. So if you want a 1/2 inch clasp, you need to mark your wire, okay? You need to mark your wire on the outside of your loops, right here and here. And then you need to mark your wire where your loop ends, here, because that's where you're going to bend. And then that will give you the exact length that you want for your clasp. So I hope that makes sense. So I want my clasp a little shorter. I don't want this one really long because I've already got 6.5 inches. So I want like just under a 1/2 inch clasp. So I'm going to show you. Let me get my marker. I'm going to turn this over so it's easier for me. So if I want a 1/2 inch clasp, I'm going to lay this down in there. That means that I need to mark at my loop. I don't know if I can blow this up, you guys, so you can see it. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Something's different the way this is. I don't know. I can't do it like I could do it before. Something's different. So I'm hoping that you can see this. So I want my clasp from this line to this line. It's a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to mark on top of the 1/2 inch line. That's as long as my clasp is going to be. Then I'm going to mark back to where the loops. So let me see if I can hold this in my hand, because I want you to see this. It's really key. It's really hard to see this. Silver is so reflective. And I'm getting out of focus here. Okay. So my loop is sitting at that line, the top of my loop. So I'm going to mark right here. I'm looking through the top of my camera, so I'm trying to see where I'm supposed to mark. Okay? So that's where I'm going to mark. And this isn't going to go through here. I'm making my clasp first. So this is going to hook in on your first link. So if I said it was, I got it backwards. So it's going to hook in on your first link. Let me remark these. So that's a little over 1/4 inch. So from here to here. And I would give yourself some more wire. So I'm going to come. I got to get some water. And here's another thing too, gang. You want to make sure you really hammer your legs really well on this. And I am going to do that again. And if I have to remark my wire, I will. But you need to make sure that the legs up to your mark. So here's my marks. Let me mark it around the other way. Let me do it this way. I know I want this no more than a 1/2 inch long. This is my hammered side. And I want these just a little over 1/4 inch. So you want to hammer to where this is good and strong, meaning you want to harden the dickens out of it, because this is what people are going to be hooking on and hanging on to every time they put their bracelet on. So I'm coming up the legs. Now silver hardens really fast, as I mentioned. Okay, so this is my back side. Because I'm not going to see that, I'm not going to be too concerned about where my marks are, because I'm not going to look at it. So we really can't see the marks on top anymore. What's important is this is where I'm going to bend. And that's going to give me my my 1/2 inch clasp, because this mark to this mark is going to come exactly to that 1/2 inch mark, relatively close. So let me look at this length again here, and they're not even. Let me get my little basket, because every little tiny bit matters. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing, and if it's too long, I'll just shorten it up. All I'm going to do is just roll in. So I'm doing the same exact thing. And I'm going to roll all the way down. And how long is that? That's a little over 1/2 inch. I'll see if I like that. I think it's a little too long for me. And then I'm going to roll back. So I'm coming at this mark here that you can't see because it keeps coming off. And I'll show you, because I know I'm going to cut this down. I don't want it that long. So all I'm going to do is from this point here. Oh, I know what I did wrong, you guys. Now I know why it's so long. I didn't roll from here. I rolled from the tip. So let me unroll. Good. That's good. I'm glad that happened, because I can show you what we're going to do. You don't have to cut another piece of wire. I'm just going to roll out of that. I'm rolling into this anyways. I'm just going to straighten up this wire a little bit. I know what I did. And it just happens when we're working with wire. We get, you know, lost sometimes. So where this mark is here is where I want to cut. Now I should have little shy of a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to come right on the tip. And if you haven't bent wire before and you're new to wire wrapping, you do not want to feel that tip coming through your 2 barrels. Much better. And then I'm going to rock back, because I need to leave it open to connect it to my bracelet. I can either open, no, I can't do that one. Never mind. I was thinking of something else. Okay, same thing here. I'm using the number 1. And then I'm going to rock back. So let's see. My hook is exactly a 1/2 inch. I mean my clasp. So it's going to go in here, but we need to adjust this wire. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to line up our pliers on the neck. So right where this loop comes in, and right here on the neck, and I'm going to stand up to see if you can see this. I'm going to pitch this out. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Trying to do this through the camera. And then I'm going to pitch this out. Then I'm going to bring them together. And we could have done this at first, but I didn't. Normally I do. I was too busy thinking about how I want to instruct this, but we really should have done this part first. squeezing them together. Just doing a little bit as I'm turning it over so they're evenly squeezing in. I'm going to put my pliers back in to line up these loops. And there's our pretty little clasp. And before I do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and buff this. And we're almost done. I'll show you how to make the hook. Wouldn't this be a beautiful necklace? Be really pretty. You could use little 2mm beads, as I mentioned, or 3mm. This is 5. And use, like I said, a smaller gauge, a 20 gauge, and make it really tiny. And it would be very delicate and make a beautiful bracelet. So now, I think I've got my loops opened enough. And all you're going to do is you should have enough gap space here to get your loops through. So I'm just going to kind of manipulate them and hook them in. Okay, so if that happens, this is what I always do. I grab right at the neck and I rock it back just a little bit. And then I'm going to squeeze it in a little bit more. Okay. I am just fiddly farting with this so much. I need to open this up. I'm trying to shove it in there and it's just so silly to do that. I just need to open it up. Oh shoot, I'm on the wrong side. Finally get it in there and I'm on the wrong side. Okay, let's squeeze these closer together. I'm hitting my bead a little bit. Okay, so that's what you should have. Then all we're going to do is close these loops up. So I'm going to get my flat nose, not my needle nose, because those are going to slip off my wire. And I'm going to roll. So I'm rolling my plier as I'm pushing it down into itself. Same thing over here. Okay, let's see how that's lining up. So I want to make a couple of corrections here. So we have our clasp. This one needs to go in this way. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to squeeze this together a little bit more. So probably should do that in the beginning. I'm going to open this one up. I don't like the way it's sitting on there. I can get my pliers underneath it. There we go. There we go. It was bugging me. That's just me. I'm fiddling with this way too much. I'm just pitching it in a little bit more. Okay, so we have this beautiful clasp. I'm just going to quickly buff that. Silver is very forgiving with marks. It's so interesting. It's a wire that hardens immediately. It feels much harder than a regular gauge copper wire, and yet it's much easier to buff anything out on it. So it's really an interesting wire. So we have our clasp. Just want to make sure that it's moving in there nicely. Squeeze these in a little bit more. So now we have our clasp. So let's see how long our bracelet is. Our bracelet is going to be a big bracelet. It's 7 inches long. I may later cut this back, but I know a lot of people make 8-inch bracelets. 90% of women don't have an 8-inch wrist, but most of them, I'm always surprising myself because I tend to go on the smaller side with bracelets. And I'm probably going to cut this and make it shorter because I don't want an 8-inch bracelet. So we're going to end up with about a 7 3/4 inch bracelet. So now we're going to make our hook. And I'm not sure this piece of wire is long enough. I don't think so. So I'm going to have to cut myself some wire. So give me a moment and I'll be right with you. So I cut myself 3 inches of square wire. And all I'm going to do is find my center. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. So here's my 1.5 mark. I'm definitely going to cut this down, you guys. I'm going to make it smaller. All I'm going to do, and I might show you how to do that depending on how long we're into this. Oh, this is taking too long. So I want a little bit of a bigger hook, meaning I want it wider here. I want more of an open loop. So I'm going to go to my 3rd step. And I'm going to find my center. I always need to eye it this way for me for some reason. And I'm going to bring it together. If you find one leg is longer, like here, you can see that it's longer. Just keep moving that leg over until it lines up with the shorter wire. So now they're lined up. I'm not going to be using all of this, but I just want to trim it anyways. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pinch in from about, I'm going to say 1/4 inch. So you can either mark your wire or just pinch it in there. I'm just going to eye it. And I'm going to hold this here. Actually, I'm going to do it with my hands. And I'm going to start pinching in down in there. I'm bringing the legs together. There are many different ways to do this kind of hook. This is just how I'm doing it today. So I want to make sure that my flat side is up here. I'm holding the legs very firmly and pinching in. Turn it over so that my pressure is even on each side. Then I'm going to straighten up my legs. Now I'm going to hammer this. So this is going to be my back. And I'm hammering the legs. Not all the way up because I'm not sure where I'm going to cut first to roll back. You want it good and hardened and strong. And then I'm just squeezing my little leggies in. I can't believe my mind. Okay, and I'm going to buff it. And it always amazes me how quickly silver buffs out in comparison to copper, and yet copper is softer. I'm sure some kind of scientists can explain it. Well, I don't think it's important. It's just stuff we notice, right? Okay, we're almost done. Just want to really clean that up so it's really, really pretty. So now I'm going to wrap this with half round. So let me get my half round. So I'm going to be using a 20 gauge sterling silver half round wire. And I just wanted to show you how springy this is. You see that? It's the springiest wire. I'm not going to need a whole lot. So I think I'm going to cut myself 5 inches. Probably too much, but hopefully whatever's left, I can use it on another project. So I'm just going to start wrapping my legs. Yeah, this is definitely too much wire, because you really want to support that hook, and I love the decorative look to it. I've done so many different kinds of hooks. I'll open them up in the middle and bow them out, and I'll add, you know, so it could be worn with the hook showing. See that spring on there? I'd love your feedback if you started off with silver. I'd love to know, you know, what your experience was going from silver to copper. Certainly would like to, you know, hear your story. Everybody has different experiences, but I think hands down most people will tell you it's not easy to work with silver when you're first starting out. So I'm going to stop there for a minute. It lines up, I'll tell you this, half round sterling silver wire lines up a lot nicer than half round copper. It just does. I think it's because of the way that it has memory, and it just hardens so dang quickly. So this is my top. So I'm going to feed this wire through the loop, and you don't have to. You can cut it right out the back. A lot of people don't tie it off, especially sterling silver, because like I said, it's got incredible memory. It just hangs on to whatever you tell it to do. And I'm just going to do one wrap because it is sterling. It's just not prone to unraveling. And then I'm just going to flatten that down on the back. So that's the back. So now I want to see how long. I'm definitely, again, you guys, going to cut this clasp down. This is going to go through here. So the next thing that I'm going to do, this is my front, is I'm going to bend this loop. So you don't need a big hook. So I'm going to use my second step, and right here at the tip, just leaving a little opening. How much is that? It's about 1/8 of an inch. You can have it as big as you want. If you want a really big hook, make a really big hook. Like this hook is obviously bigger, much bigger. I'm going to make this smaller because it's a smaller bracelet. It's just preference. All I'm going to do is I'm going to push with my thumb as I'm holding very firmly. All the way around. So now I've got my little hook, and I'm going to squeeze it together up here because it naturally will spread out like that when you're rolling it around. And you don't have to, guys, if you don't want to. Guys and gals. Now I noticed that this is cocked off, so we're going to correct that. I'm just pushing down on the side that looked a little bit higher, and I'm going to buff that anyways. Let's see what we got going here. This wire is so hard now, you would not believe it. I kid you not. It's just working with it is like, wow. There's nothing soft left to it. And that's 20 gauge square. That's why I'm saying you could use 20 gauge square if it's sterling. I just wanted a little bit of a fatter hook on this one. So we still got a high side here. I'm going to bring my plier in the other way. So there we go. Now I'm pushing down on the head and lining both of them up. So it's going to slip in like this. You could have it coming over the top. For me, I never do that because it's hard for me to do it that way. If it's on my wrist and I've tried to get this over, I don't know why, it's just easier for me to go like this. It's a personal preference. I mean, if someone asked me to do it that way, I most certainly would. I'm just straightening this up a little bit and squeezing it in. I don't need a huge amount of gap space. And then I'm just going to clean that up. I was hoping this would have gone a lot faster, but I guess that's just me. Maybe because I started off with so many details on all the different things you could do. I was trying to do a 30-minute tutorial. Didn't happen. This is so hard, you would not believe it. If I was doing this to 20 gauge square, it would have bent. I mean, holding it and girl handling it this hard. So, knowing I'm going to cut that down, what we're going to be doing, and let me show you on this one. We're going to be spreading the legs apart at the weaved part where we wrap the half round wire, and then we're going to roll them in and connect them to the end. So we're going to connect them to these links. So I'm thinking about already how long I want my clasp. So it's the same theory when you're deciding on how long you want. Now, this is really important. You need to make sure that you don't come so close, like here, where you can't. If you're too close, it's like you're going to kind of hit it a little bit. I need to close that down. That's too open. There we go. Much better. I always do a little bit on each side so that I have even pressure. Straighten that up. Okay. And I cocked it off again. Just rolling on that so that it lines those two little legs up on there. All right, so I know that I'm going to want this to sit right about there, which is going to give me a little shy of a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to stop my wrapping here. And I'm going to cut it. And I'm definitely going to save this piece. I will use it. That's going to go in my little box where I keep my half round wire. All right. So let's get these legs spread out. So I'm going to even up the length. I know I'm not going to need that much length. So where my wraps are, let me come up here. I'm going to cut it to the 1/2 inch mark from the wrap out. So here's the wrap, 1/2 inch. And I probably won't need that much, but I can always cut off the excess. So now, I'm going to hold my piece, and I'm going to spread my legs apart. So I'm just going to grab one leg. It's amazing. This is 20 gauge, and it feels more like 18 that I'm working with, or maybe even a little bit of a feel of 16. This wire is so hard. You really want to get a good gap there. And I kind of turned my thing around a little bit so that you can roll your wire in. Because if it's too close together, you're going to hit. Boy, I am fiddling with this big time. Okay, so all we're going to do is the same loop size, and I can tell you right now these are too long. I can see that. If I was going to do a number 2, because I'm so used to it, a number 2, it'd be the perfect size. So this is, I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. So it's sitting exactly at a 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to bring it down just a little bit. And let me see, this one almost looked like it was a little bit shorter already. Let's see. That is just under 1/2 inch. And that, God, I think that's about the same. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to roll them in. So you're just going to use your number 1. They may still be too big, but we're going to see here in a second. Actually, that's working out perfect. So just a little under 1/2 inch to make your first step on your loop, on your bail making pliers. To use your first step. Okay, you guys, I think I confused all that. So now we've got our little hook. And this is a little bitty hook. So let's see how long our little hook is. It is over 1/2 inch, but under 3/4. So now we're going to connect this to here. So the easiest way to do that so that you don't have to open these up again is to open these up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pitch these off again. So I'm pitching that, I'm bending it out, grabbing at the neck, bending it out. And then I'm going to open them up. And I'm wondering if that's going to be enough. Nope. Well, it did on that. It is. Yay. So I just hooked it in. So let me show you that again. I'm just hooking these two, looks like a little heart, in. We're going to have, I think, close to an 8-inch bracelet. I know I keep saying it. I'm going to cut that clasp down. So all I'm going to do is roll it in and roll it in. We're going to see how long this little baby is. Whoops. So now we've got our hook. Isn't that cute? Okay, so let's see. What do we got? These we know are 7.5. I don't know where my other one went. So we've got 10 millimeter, 8 millimeter, and 5 millimeter beads. Oh my goodness, look at that, you guys. I thought it was going to be a lot longer. It's 7 3/4 of an inch. So I may still take it down because that's pretty big, but maybe, I don't know, I'm getting ready to do a show. I'm going to squeeze these in more. So I hope you like that, everybody. Let's try them all on. So this is big for me. This is a big bracelet for me. The other ones fit me much better, but some girls really like that loose dangly feel. So don't worry about it. I'm going to sell it at the show because there'll definitely be a girl with a 7-inch wrist. So this will fit her perfect. I'm just shy over a 6. So let's put on, so that's our 5mm. This is our 7, and I need to close that hook down. I'm just noticing these little things as I'm going. There we go. This is our 7.5 and 7. So check this out. Now I got to get a good grip on this one. There we go. Aren't those adorable? You could stack these up just like that. And if you wanted stones that, you know, followed in color, like on the color wheel, you could stack them up or just wear them like that, all of these. You know how the people wear a lot of gemstone bracelets where they're attached to the little rubber, you know, the little rubber string inside? I think this is so much prettier. So you could stack a whole bunch of sizes. Isn't that fun? I just might make me, you know, rainbow colors or something, or chakra colors, and have them the different sizes like this, from large, medium to small. I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. I really had a lot of fun doing it. Please give me your feedback. Let me know your thoughts. If I made it difficult for you, I hope not. And I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. May you have a wonderful, fabulous, magical wire wrap day. Bye for now.